Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Love to take your calls, specifically on the issue of town hall meetings, what you think about the Republicans. I mean, the London Guardian is reporting on this. The New York Times is reporting on this, that Republicans are dodging town halls. I'd like to know what you think about that. I think they don't want to have to answer questions about defunding Obamacare, because they're trying to convince us that it won't work, that using a continuing resolution to defund Obamacare will not work. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing and one thing only as you need is proof that they are wrong about that, and that is the Hyde Amendment, Hyde, the Hyde Amendment. Since 1976, it is an amendment to appropriations bills dealing with a mandatory program that has made it impossible for federal funds to be used for abortion services. So taxpayer money can't be used to pay for an abortion because of the Hyde Amendment. That is a mandatory program. Medicaid is a mandatory program. And here is an amendment to a mandatory spending program that says you cannot spend money for this. And it's been working since 1976. So if a Republican congressman tries to tell you, look, it won't work to try to do this using a continuing resolution, it's all mandatory, it's all locked in, it's all on autopilot, just say Hyde Amendment. It's very, very clear that you can stop even spending for mandatory programs through a continuing resolution. Well, they do not want to hear this. They do not want to hear this, especially Republicans in the House of Representatives. They're going to say they voted 42 times to repeal Obamacare. I'm in there fighting for you. Well, every one of those votes is a good vote. I commend them for it, but they were useless. Everybody knew that it wasn't going to go to the Senate, that it wasn't going to get through the Senate, that they were symbolic votes, and I think they were good and they're important. I'm not dissing that whatsoever. I'm glad they did it. But here's an opportunity now. Though everybody knows those were just symbolic votes. Never going to get through the Senate. And President Obama would veto it if it did. So everybody knew this is just symbolic. That's fine. Symbols are important. I'm glad you did it. But here is an opportunity on this continuing resolution vote that's got to come up before September, the end of September. Here is an opportunity to do something substantive about it. Because remember, if it doesn't get out of the House, there's nothing for the Senate to vote on. I mean, you can stop this thing. The House of Representatives all by itself can stop this thing dead in its tracks simply by approving a continuing resolution that funds everything except for Obamacare. If it doesn't go over to the Senate with that in it, there's nothing for the Senate to pass. Now, the Senate could send it back to the House, but the House could say, look, we've already voted on this. We've made our will clear, and they can send it right back to the Senate. Continuing resolution that funds everything but Obamacare. Now, Republican lawmakers know that that's going to be controversial, that President Obama could shut down the government over that. And that's the thing. They think they're going to be blamed for it, and they're just afraid. I mean, they are captives to fear. They are so afraid. So they're just running around afraid of what the Washington Post will say about them. Now they're running around afraid of what their constituents will say to them. They are afraid of everybody. And you think about the constant repetitions, the constant command in the scriptures, do not fear. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear. Do not be dismayed. Somebody needs to project those verses into the brains and the spines of these Republican lawmakers. Anyway, 888-589-8840 is the number to call, 888-589-8840. Let's start with Monty, Culpeper, Virginia. Monty, do I need to bring Monty in? Yeah, there we go. Monty, Culpeper, Virginia. Welcome. What's on your mind?
Ryan, you still are one of my absolute favorite talk show hosts of AFR, and I do want to tell you that I have almost completely, we did take all the televisions out, but Eric Cantor's office for the Culpeper district is like 100 feet from my house.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. And he has a gentleman that was on the town council. He would have to be either Democratic or more independent. He absolutely could not be Republican or whatever. Even Republican's not a very good word for me. But what I wanted to share with you, I was a precinct captain here for 10 years. A friend, an attorney who was running for delegate here asked me to do this. I gave it all up because I could not stand the fact that I asked people just to volunteer for an hour at the polls to hand out literature, phony baloney if it not fit their interest. But you're just so right. It's sad that people aren't mandated to listen to AFR radio, just like Obama has mandated that we take health care that have nothing to do with better health. And I just thank you for the wisdom and the consistency and the love you have for not politics, but telling and teaching God's wisdom and truth. And just thank you, Brian.
All right, Monty. Well, listen, that's extremely kind of you. Very, very kind of you, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that, Monty. Culpeper, Virginia. Let's go to Brian in Richmond, Virginia. Brian, by the way, our signal's increased. We're covering now virtually the entire state of Virginia. Brian from Richmond, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian.
Hey.
Good afternoon. Pardon me. I have been in contact with Eric Cantor's office about the town hall meetings. I spoke with him about a week ago, and then when I got in my truck and I heard you talking about town halls, that reminded me I needed to call them again. They still have not posted a schedule. The girl that I talked to in the Richmond office here, Eric Cantor lives in Richmond. That's where he's from. You would think his office in Richmond would have, the 411.
Have some idea.
Yeah. They have no idea when his town halls are going to be. They took my email address last week, and they said they're going to email everyone who's on the list when the schedule is. But I've been I contact his office very regularly, and I haven't had anything good to say lately, so I'll be surprised if I get an email. We'll see.
Well, let me ask you, Brian, and again, some of this has to be just kind of educated guesses and speculation, but it seems to me obvious that, you're on recess, so there's nothing going on in D.C. You've got no reason to be anywhere other than in your district for an entire month. In fact, they don't go back into session until after Labor Day. So here's a prime time. Here's a month, 5 weeks, where you've got nothing on your plate. Yeah, maybe you can squeeze in a family vacation. Everybody understands that. Everybody appreciates that. Absolutely no reason why you cannot meet with constituents during the month of August, the people that pay your salary, the people that elected you to office, the people that sent you to D.C., the people that you represent. No reason on God's green earth not to meet with them in the month of August. Now, why do you think Eric Cantor is not scheduling a town hall? Do you have an educated guess on that, Brian?
Oh, yeah, I've got a very educated guess. Like I said, I call and I let my voice be known about all these things that he should be taking a stand on, and he's not. And the last few times that I've called, the person that I spoke to, said, I appreciate it, sir, but I've got to go. We're very busy. I think they've been hearing from us. And like you said, he doesn't want to face a town hall because back in 2010, everything was rosy. It was we're gonna fight Obamacare. We're gonna fight Obamacare. The last time I talked to them about the continuing resolution, I made the point. I said, yeah, you guys made all these symbolic votes, but it wasn't going anywhere. This is a chance for the House leadership, to do something about this. And the fact that Eric Cantor is so silent on this issue, and then back on August 9th, he finally made a statement saying, once we have 60 votes in the Senate, then we'll do something about it. That's the most cowardly thing I've ever seen.
It ignores the reality. It ignores the constitutional reality, Brian, that the House can stop funding for Obamacare all by itself. The House can do this if they simply refuse to send a continuing resolution over to the Senate that doesn't have funding for Obamacare. If that's the only continuing resolution the House sends over to the Senate, which they can do. Eric Cantor, John Boehner, Kevin McCarthy, they're all in charge of this. It's perfectly possible for them to put together a continuing resolution that has no funding for the implementation of Obamacare and send it over to the Senate with the message, no matter what you send back to us, this is all you're going to get from us, which means the House can do this all by themselves. They don't have to wait to get 60 votes in the Senate. They can stop this all by themselves.
The problem is, Brian, is that people in Eric Cantor's district he feels like he's a shoo-in. He feels like nobody's going to challenge him, and he's just a shoo-in. And I hope, Dan Celia has been urging us all that when we call, not just tell him we're not going to vote for him, but tell him that we're going to find somebody to run against him, and we are going to make sure that he loses.
Yeah.
And that's
well,
that's what I've been doing.
All right. Well, listen, Brian, I appreciate the call very, very much. And I think they're just running from us. They're afraid of us. They know that they are governing and leading right now against the will of their base, against the will of the grassroots in the conservative movement in America. They're governing against our will, against our preferences, against our convictions, against our principles. They know it, and they're ashamed of it. They're embarrassed by it. They don't want to have to be faced with it. So they're afraid of what the Washington Post will say about them, and they're afraid of what we will say to them, so they're just in hiding. Let's grab one more call before the end of the hour. Let's go to Paul in Dallas, Texas. By the way, you can catch us audio video streaming, afr.net. If you're not in the city that's got one of our stations, afr.net audio and video streaming. Paul, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, I just called to let you know that John Cornyn is having town halls. He's having telephone town halls. I happened to miss the call robot that invited me on August 14th because you get these numbers you can't recognize on caller ID, and then by the time you hear it, it's a little too late. But I wish I could go to one because there's two questions I have for him and even Ted Cruz, actually, and that is, what have the Republicans done so far to counteract this unilateral, health care delay by Obama instead of talking about extending it to force him to implement Obamacare this January? And the second, what have they done about his unilateral funding for staffers? And I know they have their own staffers, so I'd love to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're getting a break, and I appreciate the call, Paul. Congress and congressional staffers, they're getting a break that nobody in America gets. Taxpayers are going to cover 75% of their costs for health care. There's absolutely no statutory authority for that. It's completely wrong. It's illegal. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. And it's immoral. And I think Brian's exactly right. Paul's exactly right. We ought to put these people on record. What do you think about that? What are you going to do about that? Focal Point, AFR Talk.